Who completely forgot how to run a qualifying session, mate? Off you go.
From winning the day before to getting bumped out in the last.
Unbelievable.
In Q1, just, holy shit. I didn't see that coming.
Oh no! He's in defence! They're both in defence! They're all in defence! Oh, unbelievable!
Sound check.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
Episode 12. Woo!
It's flown by. I can't believe we're back for 12 episodes already.
It's wild, isn't it?
It is. It's gone very fast. We've had some good guests along the way, but tonight we're back for another debrief. This is one of my favourites to do. I really enjoy reviewing the supercar action, especially when you have a weekend like Tasmania. It was actually pretty eventful, this one. But firstly, before we roll into race 17 and 18 in Tasmania for the supercars, I want to give a shout out to everyone for the positive feedback on the Shane pod. It was always, we know how good Shane is and what he's like as a bloke, and his personality is probably something that wasn't really showcased very well here in Australia. I think the way the media do things in Australia is probably not encouraging of someone like Shane. I think you don't get the best out of people sometimes here in Australia with the media, but for sure the podcast, we were able to show a side to Shane, which we have known for a long time, and I think the feedback was very positive.
Yeah, I think that was the cool thing about it. As you said, we know how good of a bloke Shane is, but it was nice to see in the comments everyone going, well, Shane looks so happy, looks so relaxed, like completely different Shane.
Yeah.
I've had similar feedback to all of our guests, really. People have said that about you, they've said that about Cam, all the different people. So that's been cool.
It is funny when people say it's good to see a different side, or I didn't know he was like that. It's like, that's actually the side we all see. And there's a lot of guys in pit lane that are like that. I think that's the cool thing about what we're doing is we're hopefully bringing, a perspective to the drivers and some of the people around the sport that you wouldn't otherwise get to see. But let's roll into it, mate. We've got a massive weekend to get into. So it was race 17 and 18 of the championship in Tasmania, Symmons Plains. I don't think it was as cold as we were predicting. It was still bullshit cold. I think they said on Sunday morning it was 9 and felt like 3. So everyone wearing gloves and it was still
not warm.
It's not warm, which we will get to it, but that's why I thought this weekend it was surprising how many people underestimated the overcut. It's a very difficult place to get tyre temperature at Symmons Plains. So, I think that some of the strategies in the first race were a bit of a surprise to me. And with our podcast, we always start with format being the talking point. Can get a bit boring, so I actually want to do it a little bit differently this time, and I'd like to talk about the calendar, because the calendar is, of course, we all know we want to do more races, and the more and more we talk to people, everyone is of the same opinion. I just had a little panic then. I thought I hadn't hit the old record button on the pod there. But so the calendar, like I said, everyone knows we want to do more racing, and we're learning as we speak to people. There's no one that doesn't agree with that, but there's challenges that come with wanting to do more, and it's always the dollar figure at the end of the day. Supercars pay the teams to do, in addition of 12 events, for every event they do above that, they'll pay the team $60,000. Right. It is an expensive sport, and it costs a lot more than $60,000 per weekend to do an event. So for us to do more, we need to find money from somewhere, and at the moment a lot of the teams appear to be in the middle of contracts, so it's difficult to renegotiate one, particularly, it's like getting a pay rise and then coming back 3 weeks later and asking for another one. It's not the easiest thing to do, and teams aren't going to have much success there with that.
Well, that's exactly right. Or even put that analogy on its head. It's like your employee saying, I'll pay you $100,000 to do 5 days a week, and then they come back and say, for the same money, can you do 6 days? And you're like, hang on.
Yeah, exactly right. So that's the challenge they're facing. But I actually still don't have a lot of sympathy for the championship in some regards, because you got to completely restructure the race weekend. So we need to eliminate the time on track and the time at the event so that it is more cost effective to get to the track and do these races. So instead of being at a track on a Wednesday or a Thursday for PR and on track Friday, they should be very strict 2-day events with curfews in place to prevent teams from going early, so that it doesn't cost a crazy amount of money to add additional events. Because if we can make the events themselves cheaper to attend, then we should be able to race more, I believe, is my perspective. Because I am learning and I understand it's expensive and we need to find money, but surely there's ways we can reduce some of the cost. Mileage, Blanchard talked about as well in our last podcast. All those things, we need to get rid of some of the practice time we're doing and focus on racing. And I don't think the fans will be that upset if we're doing less practice on a race weekend, so they see the cars maybe less on track on a weekend, but we're racing every second week. Yeah,
no, I agree, mate. I think we have touched on it before. We've talked about formats where, take a session away or 2 sessions away a weekend, but every time a supercar's on track, they're going hammer and tong, they're going as fast as they can.
Yeah.
So, take away the race runs in practice where the fans are sitting there and really it probably gets boring after 3 laps anyway because they're just waddling around. So, yeah, just make it qual and race. Or every time a car is on track, they're genuinely pushing because they know they don't have a lot of time. And, yeah, I mean, Shane touched on it in his pod. He said, a genuine 2-day event is really enjoyable what they do over there for them because they have the 2 days at the track where they're hyper-focused and then they get to go home.
Yeah,
and reset for the next round and things like that. So I think, when we've tried 2-day events in Australia, they haven't been genuine 2-day events.
Exactly. And I think that's why that curfew is important.
Yeah.
Like, there's got to be a rule. Like, there's a penalty if teams are staying back late. We've got to enforce these rules so that the actual 2-day event is a legitimate 2-day event. And if there are places we can go to where it's a 2-day event but 1 day of on-track action, so it's a festival for a Sunday at a Winton or something like that, because it's such a shame that we don't have that track on the calendar. But surely that is an event we can add back with very minimal cost if we make it a festival for a day with an evening race where it goes into it can be later in the day or whatever it might be, but you have all your support categories throughout the day and a big supercar race in the afternoon. Because I do appreciate we're not, in the next 12 months, I actually think it's going to be unrealistic to see us do many more events than what we're already currently doing. They might add 1 or 2, but it's still not going to be enough. So I think supercars now need to be transparent with the fans, because if they just release a calendar and it's 1 or 2 events more or 1 event more.
Or none more.
Or the same. I mean, it'll be, the blowback, and rightly so, should be fucking terrible for supercars because they need to expand and explain why we're not doing more events. And I think just saying that it's expensive and we can't get the budget is not enough. I think you need to break down what can we do to make this sport cheaper and go back to focusing on the fans and build the popularity of the sport back up. And it might even be that you do have to take a bit of a blow on TV money to start with, but try and get us on, as much even free to air, get us to the racetrack as much as possible and put on a show as regularly as possible, so that we then become more popular, more household names, and a lot more mainstream. That's one of the things the sport's struggled with lately is we've fallen off the radar for mainstream. I was really impressed, actually. Walkinshaw's PR team did a very good job. I opened the Herald Sun last week, and Ryan Wood had a half page.
Oh, great.
Which is unreal. So that was really good to see. So they've done a good job at making mainstream. I haven't seen a supercar article in the mainstream for a very long time.
Yeah.
So that was impressive. But I do think we need to, or supercars, not we, but they need to be transparent with the fans.
Yeah.
And you can't just use the excuse of it's expensive and we don't have the money.
Yeah.
Let's find out how we can make it achievable.
Yeah. Look, unfortunately, I don't know any more than you or anyone else at home that's listening does at the moment. But, on the negativity side, I can't see it changing in the next couple of years too drastically because, one, I mean, Ampol have just signed a 3-year deal with Triple Eight. So it's very hard to lock someone in if you don't, unless they know, because and that was part of the thing. Like Tim mentioned it, Tim Blanchard mentioned on the pod we did with Tim. Like, it's really difficult just for the teams for them to go, yep, we're going to do another 3 rounds next year if they're already locked into certain amounts of sponsorship with different commercial partners. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know how, they obviously, none of the teams know what they're doing yet as far as rounds or if there's more or less. So, to your point, everyone's saying we want to race more. So hopefully they are transparent and as soon as they can say yes or no, or at least deliver that as smoothly as they can, because at the moment I think there's a little bit of hope. Everyone's sort of thinking, I hear a bit of chatter in the background, people thinking there's going to be a couple more, but there may not be.
Yeah, and I think there might be good reasons why not, but I do worry because one thing supercars don't do very often is be transparent, because they try and hide the elephant in the room, and I think that could bite them in the arse if they don't explain to everyone why it doesn't expand. And I think it is likely it won't change in the next 12 months.
Yeah, I don't think it will.
Which I've been an advocate for doing more racing, but I am okay if this is a short-term pain thing. I just want to understand why.
Yeah.
But we keep going to these racetracks. So Simmons Plains on the weekend. The first note I made for this debrief was Friday 1 hour practice, just shoot me. Because, I haven't heard anyone talk about how we can condense these formats to save cost and mileage on parts and components and things like that so that we can expand the championship without it costing much more. Because every time we go to a race weekend, the format is the same shit. It's rinse and repeat from the weekends before. I mean, 1 hour, that's probably a positive because I think Sydney was a 90-minute practice when it was 3 degrees and dark. So the 1 hour practice killed me.
It's 1 hour, 2 of a 50-second lap, so it's a lot of laps they're pumping out.
100%. There was people, like Ryan Wood did a 27-lap run in practice. and still had enough time to then go into his quali sim.
They are the best teams and the best drivers in the country and the world, whatever you want to call it. But so they probably don't need 60 to 70 laps to work it out.
Exactly right.
They probably need 5, have 20 minutes to think about it, another 5, and then send it for qual. So, yeah, I mean, that was a bit silly again. But
and then on Saturday, so they finished up Friday night with the 1 hour practice and they rolled out on Saturday morning with another 20-minute practice session. I would love to have just rolled straight out to Saturday and done practice quali in a race. I don't think the Friday was necessary, and I don't know that it's pivotal to the event, but that just added a massive amount of cost to the weekend.
Yeah.
But positives for me, I know you're a little bit on the fence with it, I did enjoy the qualifying format. I don't think it's something that would work every weekend, but the only thing you could do, and actually SVG joined our live stream today when we were discussing this, and we talked about the qualifying format. So this weekend in Tasmania, it was a knockout system. Q1, 4 cars got knocked out. Q2, another 10 cars get eliminated, and then you go into a final Q3 with the top 10, which is effectively, it's almost a shootout. It's only 10 minutes long. But Shane raised a good point. 4 cars is not enough in the first one, and typically it ends up being the same 4 cars too. So maybe it is just a Q2 and Q3 so that you see, you remove Q1 completely, and then you do a split of the field. And, Shane said it could be like 16 eliminated and then a top 8, I think it was. And I mean, for me, I'd still love to see a top 10 go out on track. So for that 10 minutes, you have, enough cars on track. I don't think 8 is a big enough number, but that's something I would like to see. But I was a fan this weekend of the knockout. I think it worked quite well at Tasmania because it's a short, sharp track and it was exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting too. They did it at Tassie because Tassie is such a short track. It's under 3 kilometres in distance with the amount of cars. Like traffic is obviously quite a big thing. So it would have added a lot more stress to it too than if it was on a normal size racetrack as well, because if someone got balked or they mistimed their run. So I like that Supercars did it at that event because if it was going to throw a curveball, this was the track it would do it.
Definitely.
And we saw a little bit of it with it anyway with, drivers getting the shits because some drivers didn't go by the go point and they were doing slow warm-ups and things like that, and it caused traffic and whatnot.
So the go point in our driver's briefing, normally they say at the kink on the back straight is your go point, and you don't have a choice. It's like it's a gentleman's agreement. It's not in the rule book. It probably is something that doesn't need to be in the rule book, that at every track there is actually a go point, because what happens is it ends up just being a grey area. So on the weekend, you hear drivers bitching and moaning because we all feel hard done by when you held up, but then there's no penalty given, so it ends up literally just being bitching and moaning because there's no actual they haven't actually broken a rule.
It's not a rule, it's just an agreement.
Exactly. And when you've got an agreement, it's never going to work because you send the Red Bulls out first and they're going to have clean air and they're going to back the train up so that Chaz gets held up. And I think that's what Chaz was venting about after qualifying on Saturday. He got traffic. But the other thing as well, which the knockout system, I think why they do it at Tasmania is the category thinks that you've got less cars on track, so it should be less chance for impeding. But with it being such a condensed session of only 10 minutes, everyone's on track at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite difficult until you get to the top 10. The guys outside that are actually struggling because you've only got 10 minutes, so everyone rolls out at the same time. Whereas a 20-minute session with 24 cars on track, you have the chance of getting a clear lap in.
Yeah.
So it kind of contradicts itself in a way. It almost...
And everyone waits for that last minute or two for happy hour or happy minute, don't they? Yeah. Where, that's when the track's at its best, so everyone sits there and waits.
Everyone sits there and waits. And at a track like Tassie, slipstream is huge.
Yeah, we saw a bit of that, didn't we?
Yeah.
People trying to get drafts and pulling up and letting go. And
next to the hairpin on Sunday, they actually stopped on the infield. Pulled up in a train and completely stopped stationary just to not tow someone. And it is. I've done it. I actually was thinking about it today. I did it at Formula Ford once. Nick Percat was racing for Miguel. I was racing for a car manufacturer called Spectrum, and I towed Percat by accident, and he out-qualified me, qualified on the front row, and I qualified third. And I remember thinking, you feel so ripped off when you've towed someone. So that's why everyone pulls to the infield and completely stops, because you don't want to just give a handout to someone, it's like a free pass. So they do try and, you want to tow yourself, but you also just don't want to give it to the next guy as much as anything.
It's even worse when you tow someone and then they tow you back, but you fluff your lap up.
Oh, there's nothing worse. They actually give it back to you and you lock a front into turn 1 and you fuck your whole lap anyway.
One thing on the format, just to finish, we did find it strange they had a practice again on Sunday after they had raced.
Yes, actually.
So that was a little bit strange. They'd done full almost race weekend up to Saturday night and raced and qualified and everything, but then they throw another practice in on Sunday morning. That was a little bit strange.
Yeah, exactly. And it's only 20 minutes. Like, what's really the benefit of... It's like a carby session in go-karts where you go just to make sure your dad hasn't screwed up the jetting on your engine. And at supercar level, I don't think it's necessary to do a carby session.
No, that's right.
I think these guys are better than that. So I think let's eliminate that. But the reason that format's so important is because I know it's coming where they say, the category that is, says, we're sticking to the events we're doing because we can't get the money in and people are in the middle of sponsorship negotiations or can't change their contracts. And I don't actually think that's a good enough excuse anymore.
No.
I think that we need to be looking at the events themselves, the format, and reducing some of the on-track action that is irrelevant to the weekend.
Yeah.
Irrelevant to the fans. And now sitting on the couch, I heard Chaz talk about the longer races are better. Until this year, I didn't realise the format was as disastrous as it was. I've seen the comments about it, and now I sit down and watch a weekend, and I have a totally different perspective. So, Supercars and other journos are writing stories about what the drivers want. Don't ask the drivers, because I know from in the driver's seat, we think a race is exciting, or you have a good race and you're completely biased because you think that format's great. That was a really exciting race. But it's because you didn't see the other 22 cars following each other. You're very isolated.
Only your point of view. And and drivers are always going to love a practice session too, because it's a non-pressure session where they can work out what they got. Yeah. Like, it just takes that little bit of pressure off too. So to your point, you probably never minded because you're like, I need to dial this thing in, so I need all the free kicks I can get.
Well, until this year, I didn't realise either, though, how efficient Triple Eight is with testing programs. So these small teams, like I heard David Reynolds saying how good it is as a small team to get more practice because it gives you an opportunity to match the big guys. Well, I can tell you now that when the big guys get an extra test day or an extra test session, they're going to maximise it a hell of a lot more than a Team 18 will. And I know that for a fact because I've been at a lot of Team 18 test days. And it's no disrespect to those guys individually. That's every smaller team. Yeah, they don't run the program as well as a T8 does. So by eliminating practice, I actually think you'll see guys like this weekend where MSR rolled out of the truck with a very quick car do well. They'll jag a setup, or not jag it because they've worked hard, but they've come up with a setup at home and they roll out with a fast car, and it doesn't give the other guys an opportunity to fix it. Yeah. So I reckon get rid of it, and it will cut a lot of cost into the weekends as well. Like you could immediately eliminate an hour and 40 minutes of practice, which is a full race at another event.
Yeah, I mean, over a year, you could take, I mean, I'm not going to do the quick maths now because I'm not smart enough, but you could take a serious amount of kilometres off engines, transaxles, and all the other components in the car. So you're lifing. And that was one of the things when Tim Blanchard from BRT was on our pod. He said the new cars are great, but they take a lot of manpower to re-prep and rebuild everything pre-event.
Yep.
And that was one of his concerns for adding more races as well. If you can take, as an example, 1,000 or 1,500 Ks off an engine and a transaxle and all that stuff, you're also taking that time and hours that are spent in the workshop rebuilding stuff. So
this is one thing too that I love being able to add a little bit of perspective or not perspective, it's insight into the championship. Now, Erebus is trying to sell, and that's no secret. So they are cutting costs as much as possible. And at Sydney Motorsport Park, the engine failed on Jack LeBrock's car, and Baz actually told me at the track it was just they're stretching life on components. And I don't know if it's cutting costs, but you'll actually see teams do that are smaller or maybe are struggling for budget. They will start to stretch the lifing on components and things like that. And engines is one thing where you actually get a massive performance loss if you're starting to stretch the engine. And a lot of teams will start to do it now because they want to have the best in the car come Bathurst.
Yes.
So in these last 3 events now in the lead up to the endurance events, they'll stretch the engines and things like that to make sure they get a fresh one for Bathurst.
Yep.
The big teams aren't going to be doing that. No. You know what I mean? Like, I know when Scotty Mack was here, they were rebuilding an engine every weekend. No team could afford to do that except them. So they were $80,000 a weekend on engines.
Is there restrictions now on how many you can have though?
There's mileage, like you can't
do it before a certain
minimum
point.
Yeah. So you have to do a certain number of miles on the engine to try and but the smaller teams have almost always done that.
Yeah.
It's actually been put in place to stop the bigger teams being able to do an engine rebuild every weekend.
1,000 Ks putting a new motor in.
Exactly. So, and when Scotty Mack was there, I heard that, it was every race weekend, they'd pull the engine out, rebuild it.
Wow.
And I reckon you'll see a much better championship if we eliminate a lot of this fucking running around that has no benefit to the fan on the sideline. I think that's going to help the smaller guys as well compete with the big guys, because this is the time of year now I think you'll start to see small teams struggle with component failures or engine failures, things like that, because they're just stretching it to get to the endurance events.
No, that's a good shout. Saturday, mate, quali, as you said, they did the 3-part qualifying. this weekend. That was for both days, the old rinse and repeat. A few standouts. So there's a couple of shocks, actually, in Saturday. We had a couple of cars that you would normally see up the front that have been winning races this year and on the podium not make it past Q3. Yeah. So we had Matty Payne at Groves. He was out, Jack LeBrock was out, and Will Davo also didn't get past Q1.
Yeah, that definitely surprised me. Matty Payne particularly. But then I sort of look back and his qualifying hasn't actually been spectacular. I know he's had results, but the results have come through a lot of strategy, and I think that just sneaking into the top 10 has been a good result for Matty Payne. From even Townsville when he won, he was 10th, I think, in qualifying. Yeah. But it was definitely a fall from grace still for Groves. But what was really good to see was Richie actually out-qualified and was quicker in every practice than Matty Payne. So he pumped his teammate on the weekend. And I think that, Groves have got a bit of work to do because typically the cars that are strong at Simmons Plains are pretty good at Sandown as well. So, they were strong last year at Sandown, but I didn't expect them to have such a struggle here at Simmons Plains.
Makes sense, yeah. Couple of straights with a couple of squiggles, some big braking. Yep.
So I think that was disappointing for them. And I think, excuse me, I got gassy here. These Monteiths, you got me some Monteiths for the Shane pod, and they're full of gas. They're Kiwi ciders though, so they're not Australian. That's why we need some.
Must have got shaken up as they come across the ditch, mate.
We need an Aussie cider sponsor. That's what we need. Although the good old VB's looking after you. I haven't seen you burp yet.
No, although I will now that you've mentioned
Victor Bravos. But so anyway, I think Groves have got a bit of work to do. That was interesting. And LeBrock, we'll get to it a little bit later with our Who Forgot, Who Remembered, but LeBrock was a surprising one for me to not even make it past Q1. And, of course, Davo has been very strong, Sydney Motorsport Park. Yep. And we haven't actually noted down Anton, but he actually wasn't a real standout either. So Saturday he actually did make the top 10 with 8th, but Sunday I will skip ahead because I thought that Sunday was quite interesting. I didn't think there was much. So Davo's recovered a little bit and out-qualified Anton on Sunday.
Yep.
But both of them were down in 17th and 15th for Davo. So, yes, Anton snuck in on Saturday, but one thing that's a little bit of an asterisk there is the Saturday qualifying was altered by a red flag, which was called out at a ridiculously stupid time. I thought that was bullshit. But anyway, there was a lot of guys that got affected. So I think on Saturday, Anton may have snuck into the top 10 when he probably wasn't there. So Shell, after Sydney Motorsport Park and even Townsville were quite strong, I think that they're going to have their work cut out for them heading into Sandown now too.
Yeah, and that red flag, as I said, it was it hurt a lot of people because they were either halfway through their run or, so we probably didn't get a real gauge on a proper top 10 on Saturday.
I was really annoyed. Like, I watched that and there was 36 seconds left when they pulled the red flag. Randall was the guy who spun across the start-finish line and caused the red flag. All it was they got stuck in the gravel. He went into the gravel trap, and I think they just assumed there's no way he's getting out of there. So before they even gave him a chance to spin the wheels and see if he could get out, they pulled the red flag. And the majority of the cars were down at the hairpin, so there would have been 20 seconds they could have waited, or even 15, 10. Fuck, just see if he can spin his wheels or not.
As soon as it came out, he was driving out. Yeah,
exactly. And then I think that would have completely changed the complexion of qualifying on Saturday. But you said something which I actually hadn't really thought about. I do wonder if they jumped the gun now. No, you said maybe they jumped the gun to help.
Look, and I doubt that because the people in the control tower that are making decisions, their main focus is safety, right? So I get it, but it does make a lot of people say, and there will be a lot of people in the comments no doubt saying, because at that point when they brought the red out, Will Brown was in 15th and he was halfway through a lap that would have put him in the top 10, no dramas.
Yeah.
Probably up the top of the timesheets. So, you're always going to have the people going, oh, they did that, to spice up the championship or whatever. And look,
I love a conspiracy.
So I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat because I don't think that's why they did it, but there will be people saying that.
Yeah,
and it just coincidentally, unfortunately, Will hadn't done his lap yet, and it looks
there was a lot of them. Yeah, I think there was quite a few that, like Frosty. So Team 18, every year we're fast. Well, I'm not there anymore, but we've been quick when I was there at Simmons Plains. And Frosty and Reynolds were both guys that got screwed by that. So,
well, it was interesting too, mate. I mean, we laughed about it because if everyone they interviewed, there would have been 21 cars in the top 10 because everyone was on a pole lap when the red flag came out.
The funny thing
it would have been an interesting session if it did say green because there was 21 cars that were going to fill the top 10.
I watch it now and I'm like, I used to say that all the time. And I used to say it because I believed it, but also it's like the perception of everyone watching, you're trying to change, You're like, we had a fast car and you're trying to convince I realize now you're actually trying to convince other people.
And also yourself, I think.
Yeah, probably. But now I watch it and I'm like, oh, fuck, why does every driver say the same thing? And I did laugh because when I heard everyone saying, oh, I had a front row car or I could have been on pole today, I remembered in our pod with SVG, he actually said he started Apex Hunters with Nick Foster because after every session, every driver would release the same statement saying, oh, I could have, if, buts, maybes, the car was fast, but this happened and I didn't get to execute my lap or someone blocked me. It was always the same shit. So they started Apex Hunters as a bit of a joke off the back of that. And now I'm noticing, and believe me, guys, I'm not just saying, oh, these drivers, what are they doing making excuses? I've done it. I used to do it every weekend.
We've all done it.
But now I'm laughing going, fuck, you text me immediately and go, mate, I think there's 21 blokes here that could have made the top 10. Every single driver said the same thing.
It's like, I don't know if anyone's seen it, but if you haven't, go check it out. He's very funny. Jordan Taylor's a sports car racer in America.
Very funny.
And he did a video only a couple of weeks ago about drivers' excuses.
Yeah.
When you qualify P2 and all these random excuses, atmospheric pressure and all this crap that you'll come up with that why you weren't on pole.
Yeah.
And it's bang on. So if you get a chance, not to pump another driver's socials up.
No, Jordan Taylor, he's very funny.
MSR, though, they've got that secret sauce for Tassie, don't they? Because
they do. Last year, they were very strong as well.
Yeah, last few years have been really strong there. And again, on Saturday, they were P5 and P6. And we'll talk about race results in a minute. But whatever it is they do with their cars, they seem to really suit the Symmons Plains racetrack. And to your point earlier about being good for Sandown, it'd be interesting to see if that transfers because they've been really strong there at Tassie, which is, so it's like 3 years now they've had a car in the top 5.
I'm interested how they go at Sandown.
Yeah.
Because the thing that impressed me with MSR on the weekend was actually their pit stops as well. Because even with Percat on Sunday, I won't give away where he qualified yet, but he got back in the race, like past 17 cars in a race, which is unbelievable. And you can't do that without well-executed pit stops as well, especially when everyone pits on the same lap with an early safety car. Yep. The pressure's on the crew. So going into Sandown, they'll be feeling confident. If they have a fast car, I think that now is when you want the crew to feel good about himself and feel confident. And they contributed massively to Nick's weekend. His result on Saturday, the overcut worked, but they did a 3.7 second pit stop compared to a 4.7 second pit stop for Red Bull.
Isn't it?
So they took a second out of him, and that was enough to put them in the lead. So, Nick made a spot, but the team then also helped him make another spot by executing in the pit stop. So good on them. I think that they should be stoked with that because they contributed to that win as much as the driver.
Just wrapping up Saturday qual, mate. Brock was obviously on pole.
Yep.
That was good to see Brock. He's
had quite a few poles this year. I think Shane said last year he thought his qualifying was very good and he's impressed me this year as well because I think Will is fast and, he's executing his laps, but I think the Brock on a day when, Will makes a mistake, his teammate's going to get him. They're duking it out, and those cars, when they're fast, Brock seems to be doing a really solid job there.
And a little bit of love for Aaron Love on Saturday because he qualified P13. He's a rookie. It's his first year in the main game, so that's a good effort. And they're also obviously in a smaller team, a new 2-car team, slightly under-resourced.
I love the deep dive, though, that we're trying in here to think of people that may not get the mention on broadcast, and I think that Aaron Love on the weekend to out-qualify JC both days is a very good performance. And P13 for those guys after the time they've had recently, they had a really tough time in Sydney. They were very slow. They've bounced back with P13 for him. And, to out-qualify JC both days I think is a really good thing. And, so stoked for him, mate. Very happy for him. And I don't, they did an interview with him, but I saw about 4 interviews with JC. So typical of broadcast, again, they just focus on the big dogs, but I think there was a good story there that got missed across the weekend.
Yep.
And one thing I know from a driver is you get a little bit of love like that, you get a bit of attention in the pit lane and you feel good and it boosts your confidence. If that goes missed, he made a mistake on Sunday's race, that's what's going to be in his mind now. So I would say, Aaron, if you do listen to this podcast, review what happened on Sunday, but don't let it kick in the balls. Bounce back at Sandown and do exactly what you did at Symmons Plains because that's good progress.
No, 100%. Saturday, the race. Some would say an unlikely winner, but he qualified up the front. So,
well, actually, I said to you, maybe this podcast we should look at doing some additional series, which I think we will in the future. But the debrief for this one, the weekend was actually, there was a lot that happened. So today we decided, there's enough supercar action here to talk about for this podcast without having to stretch it to other categories. So I enjoyed Saturday's race. I actually thought it was good. And being a short track, the strategy was affected by lapped cars. Like it was, well, not lapped cars, but cars that had taken their pit stop and then were going to be lapped by the leaders that had tried to go long. So Percat, I actually think there's a little bit of luck involved. Cam Waters pitted.
Yep.
And Brock Feeney was leading at the time and ran into a little bit of traffic.
Yeah.
You saw him cut the apex curb of turn 7 onto the front straight, and he just had traffic, but there was a gap to Percat. So in all of that, Percat was able to close the gap a little bit to Feeney.
Yep.
And then Feeney, because he'd already caught the traffic, he was kind of forced to pit, because if he didn't pit, I think the undercut would have then worked for Cam, because he would have had tyre temperature and he would have then done an extra lap on Brock. So the overcut from Brock wouldn't have worked. So Brock had to pit, but because Percat then had a little bit of a buffer, he could drive up to those cars that had already pitted and get the overcut and make it effective, and then obviously executed well by the MSR crew. But yeah, a little bit of luck involved there, I thought was, everything went Percat's way, and I think whoever wins the race, you have to have some luck on your side. Yeah,
no, that's right. There's so many moving parts and so many variables across a race that, Brock was probably had more speed and was probably a little bit unlucky how it played out for him, his race. And then, as you said, Nick's race, it just really fell into their hands. He was in a good position. He had good track position, and then he didn't get held up. As you said, pit crew did an amazing job, gained him some space and time there.
Yep.
And a second at a track like Tassie.
Huge percentage over 50 seconds. I'm shit with maths, so I'm not even going to try. But
even if you're a 10th faster than someone, it's still going to take you 10 laps to gain that, what they gained him in the pits.
Yeah, and I even with the little bit of traffic and a bit of luck that I'm saying, I'm not taking anything away from Nick. I think that they did everything right. I think that, it just, everything went in his favour. Yep. And they executed. Once he got the lead, though, that was...
Yeah, he looked comfortable.
He was fast. He legitimately deserved to win the race, because when he got in the lead, he proved he had the car speed. So, very good. What about, and I've posted this to the Apex Hunters socials as well, Andre Heimgartner and Mark Winterbottom shunt.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
Well, there was a bit going on, wasn't there? So I think it started earlier in the day from qualifying. I think Andre went down and had some words because he got balked or held up, or something happened in the quali sesh with him and Frosty. And so Andre wasn't happy about that. And then it all sort of boiled over into the race. And then Andre just obviously had enough down at the hairpin. I think it was on the last lap, and just decided to keep his boot in it and say la vie to old Frosty. So
I don't know if they've been watching NASCAR, but there were some scores settled on the weekend.
Look, you don't see people just getting dumped for the sake of it, but it was kind of refreshing. I think no one's really been that keen for a couple of years to really show their emotions and do that sort of stuff. So I think it was nice to see. You could actually see the emotions of the drivers watching the cars around the track. Like on Saturday and Sunday, there was some stuff going on. So kudos to all the drivers for getting the elbows up and racing hard, because it's entertainment. That's what fans want to see. They want to see you race hard. They don't want to see cars in the fence and stuff like that, but they want to see hard racing. And if you got the shits with someone, get in the rear bar.
Yeah.
There's not many rivalries in the sport anymore that last longer than 12 hours. We don't have the Murphs and the Ambroses. We don't have the Scapes and the Ingles anymore. So, hopefully maybe we start to see a little bit of that come back, and then maybe that will also help, the household names.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think that one part of the incident that I've noticed, because it happened a couple of times on the weekend, where people interlocked wheels. So the shunt between Andre and Frosty, I think, wouldn't have been as bad in the old generation car, because you can react a little bit. Like you can push someone, you can bump them and run beside them with them a little bit sideways. But at the moment, it looks like the wheels are interlocking and it's turfing the car on the outside. So it happened between Brody and Reynolds on Sunday as well. The wheels interlocking, I know it was tyres really at Darwin, but we are seeing a lot of this happening. So I think Supercars maybe need to take a look at the profile of the rim, whether the spokes on this new car are sticking out too far. I know there's things you can do with cambers as well, with enforcing minimum or maximum camber, which you don't really want to do, because you want to be able to leave the freedom of the setup to the crew. But the interlocking, I thought, was a bit shit on the weekend. I'm starting to notice these wheels are locking. Yeah,
we've seen it a lot this year. I mean, that Cooper Murray crash at Darwin was due to wheels grabbing each other.
And I want to be able to see them. Like even the Andre one, I don't know that he intentionally spun him.
No.
And I think what he was doing was probably not too bad. Like I love the rubbing, and I love what Randall did to Brown on Sunday by moving him at the hairpin. Then Brown did it again. Fucking brilliant. Like that's exactly what we want to see. But I think, and I've had it before, where the wheel's in a lock and it rips the steering wheel out your hand, and you turf someone. And it's like all you were trying to do was move them out the way or rub doors with them or whatever, and you lock wheels, and it just fucks the whole incident. It's actually not.
And it caused a lot of damage too.
It does, yeah. And the rear end on these cars are like tin foil, so they're falling apart.
We touched on our stream of the race, mate. Like, if you think back to the 17-inch wheels that we used to run on the cars, they were very flat-faced. The spokes were very flat. The new ones are quite jagged and they protrude a lot, like as you mentioned. So, and we never used to see, like, the racing used to be quite hard. We never used to see wheels interlocking. So I think, to your point, whoever's designing the wheels now needs to probably go back and have a look at that. And I think there's something in that, because those are, I think, are the old Oz racing wheels or whatever they used to be on the 17 inches. They had a flat face and you could bang wheels and you would never grab a wheel. You could grab tyres and stuff, but you wouldn't grab wheel to wheel. So,
and we want to see drivers not afraid to bang wheels. And I think it's going to get to the point where you start to avoid it. And that breeds bad racing. Let's see the drivers lay into each other a bit. I'm actually going to take two for a second here and pause for my next drink because I'm dried up. But
it's crisp, isn't it?
It's so good. Never gets old. We always allow that to just play out because that is a sound that resonates with everyone.
Absolutely. The old sound check.
Chaz on Saturday, 3 tyres I thought was a good move. I'd love to see more people have a crack at that because you can overtake. It's just that when the field spread's close, a lot of teams avoid it because they don't want to take the risk. But fuck, if you know we're in the championship, just do it. Like, Chaz had the luxury of some field spread at the front of the field, but I think it'd be good to see other teams take a bit more of a punt on the 3 tyres at Simmons Plains.
Yeah, and I think it shows probably, in my opinion, the confidence the team have in Chaz to be able to pass cars. We've seen him pass cars in the past. Because to your point, Simmons is quite a small track. There's probably 2 to 3 opportunities to get a pass on a lap if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's not a lot of opportunities, but they were obviously confident to go, if we give him the grip, he'll get the moves done.
Yeah, for sure.
And he'll race hard. So, as you say, good on him for having the balls to run it, and it worked for him. He got back up.
Drivers, if you like, I don't think an engineer should ever make an engineering decision based on what he thinks the driver's capable of.
Yeah,
I think if they see an opportunity and go, let's take 3 tyres, if the driver doesn't do what he is paid to do, that should be a conversation that's had after the race, is my opinion. Like, if my engineer says to me, we're taking 3 tyres, go out there and pass some cars, and I don't pass anyone, I would be expected to get a pull through on Monday morning for not doing what was asked of me, because I think once you start seeing engineers be conservative because they don't think the driver's up to it, like
engineering the wrong bloke.
And some engineers I know don't like having the hard conversation, but you got to tell your driver, like, fuck, mate, this is on. Okay, we've given you 3 tyres now. We've given up track position. Do what you're here to do. Pass some cars.
Yeah.
And move them. Take some risk.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And as a driver, I reckon we should have some freedom from the teams to do that. That's probably the only thing when you have someone like a Richie 3 rounds ago.
Yeah.
If they took 3 tyres at a Simmons, say this event was 3 rounds ago when he was not confirmed for next year, but he wasn't fired.
Playing it safe.
He's going to play it more safe. So a team also then needs to allow the driver freedom and go, we've put you in this situation. If we take 3 tyres, go and pass some fucking cars. And if it goes south, that's okay. We'll live and die by this decision, and it won't affect our next move on you. You know, go out there and just do what you can do.
Yeah, no, totally agree, mate. So that was Saturday. Nothing else really, I think, worth mentioning. Pretty good race, as you said.
I genuinely, and Sunday I enjoyed as well. So Saturday and Sunday, we can be sometimes negative on format and things, but I thought that Saturday was very good. I was very pessimistic about Sunday, but even qualifying, I don't know if it's the format. I enjoyed it. Like, I genuinely think it was a good format.
Yeah, well, they did the rinse and repeat for the quali, so it was a 3-parter for Sunday again. I mean,
I know who's your standout here for qualifying blunders, mate.
My standout was,
who completely forgot how to run a qualifying session, mate? Off you go.
Like Percat and the MSR, like from winning the day before to getting bumped out in the last.
Unbelievable.
In Q1, just, you know, holy shit. I didn't see that coming. I did not see it because both their cars have been fast all weekend, and Hill went on to qualify in the 10 as well.
Yeah. No, I didn't see it coming at all, mate. And I think that
I was surprised because they interviewed them and they said, what happened? And they tried to get through they didn't run greens.
It was a case of getting cocky.
But the track, like 3/10 will cover the whole field there.
I know. Like, honestly, I think that it's one thing to say we've got a car that's good enough for pole. If you don't execute, you don't have a car that's good enough for pole. Doesn't matter. Everyone has the same story. But I think to go out there and try and get through on used tyres, there are a lot of people will try and do it. I know he's not the only person that's ever tried to do this.
But at Simmons, it seems like a risk.
I honestly, mate, my opinion is you've just won the day before. Let's just back it up with a great result.
Yeah.
And if you're in the situation to win again, fucking go for it. But you've got to just tick the 1%ers. And I think they took a really bold move in qualifying and probably got ahead of themselves. I think you needed to today come out and try and qualify in the top 6 or 8. And if a bit goes your way, you're back in podium contention again and you might get a win. Because it's not saying, okay, we're not going to try and win.
Yes.
But they went out there today to try and outsmart everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably where the move went wrong. So I was actually I was pretty gutted for Percat in that because he was let down for sure.
Massively. And for the team because they're a smaller team and the elation of the day before.
Yeah.
As you said, he rolled out and I think on the first run when everyone's unused, he was 5th.
Yeah, right.
And he thought that was enough. But then obviously there was
bump.
still 7 minutes to go or something. Everyone goes and throws greens on and then goes 5 tenths quicker. And then he literally ended up last from 5th on that first run in that session. So
even going out and roading the tyres, like the thing they could have done differently, hindsight's wonderful, but I don't really even know you needed the power of hindsight. He should have gone out with enough time that his roading lap, like he could start the lap.
Watch the clock and go, I need to push.
Yeah, because we were watching live timing going, fuck, he's dropping fast. He needs to get on with it.
It happened quick,
and they could have just sent him early enough that second set, if he needed to, he could have kept going. But if he was safe, he could have pitted.
Yeah.
Because it's not a track that takes a lot out of the tyres.
No, you could
send him early and go, mate, this is the ideal lap here is going to be a tyre warming and bedding lap, and we're going to pit you. But I need you to press on, and we will tell you if we're safe or not. Yeah. And that way he could have come in. If he's that confident, he said, I should have been pole. Yeah. Fuck, mate. Just go around and do a banker lap on green tyres then, and you'll be top 10.
Yeah, to your point, they could have pushed onto the hairpin. They've done 3 corners and taken nothing out of the tyre and still been
exactly. And if
safe.
they still got through then on their used tyre, great, pit him.
Yeah.
They didn't.
Little notable mention for the dog, Slade dog. He was in the top 10 both days for qualifying, which nice turn of pace.
Yeah.
They seem like they're starting
I think he out-qualified Golding both days. I always talk about teammate versus teammate because there's too much between the teams. You can't compare. Yeah. You know, I'm sick of hearing people say like, oh, he's always running P10, he's dog shit. I think that you need to compare your teammate.
Yeah, compare apples with apples.
Exactly. Like I look back to Frosty last year, him and I were neck and neck. I beat him in qualifying last year across the season, and then now when Reynolds goes there, his benchmark is Reynolds because Reynolds dominated. Yep. They're neck and neck. You can't say Reynolds has fallen off the cliff or anything like that. No. It's always based on the team, and I think that, you know, this weekend again, Slade Dog was back in good form and got up there, mate. So I like seeing that. Golding didn't have a bad weekend though. He was still pretty competitive. It was just close. I mean, those two drivers often are pretty close. I don't think there's been.
I think they're both maximising what they got, and it just depends whether, like we saw with Golding at Darwin, he got pole.
Yeah,
he had a car that was good enough and he got pole, and I think if Slade Dog gets a car that's good enough, he'll do the same thing.
Yeah, and those teams often have little gremlins throughout a weekend that we don't often see.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like it might be like the radio issue at Sydney Motorsport Park, which he was in the top 10.
Yeah.
And Slady ended up finishing down the back because he missed his pit window. So stuff like that always happens with those sorts of teams, and they'll find their feet. It's still early days for them and in a tough championship. So, yeah, when the car is good like that, they need to capitalise. So I thought that was pretty impressive.
And I think you touched on it before, mate. Richie qualified Payne both days. So, again, teammate battle there.
Yeah.
Good on Richie. Obviously, he's doesn't know what he's doing next year yet, so it's a good time for him to be being the top dog, you know, in qualifying out of that team.
Exactly, and I didn't like, David Couchy said on the broadcast that they were trying to compliment Richie, and he said that, yeah, it's good to see Richie having a good weekend this weekend, and I thought it was unnecessary to isolate Richie's performance to that one weekend. I think the team, to be honest, hasn't been doing amazing lately. Like, there's been a lot of hype around Matt Payne and Groves, but to be honest, they haven't qualified spectacularly, and they've done really well with which we've given them credit for. They've done very well with their strategy, and that's often brought them back into contention. But they do qualify around P10 with Payne, and then sort of the 14 or 12 with Richie. Yeah. So I think that team probably needs to do a bit of work because Matty Payne is a great steerer. He doesn't just forget.
I think Matty's had 2 poles for the year, but as you said, it's quite up and down. He'll either be like top 3 or 15th.
Yeah.
So, they just need to get that consistency.
Well, Payne on Saturday, I think he qualified. Where was Payne on Saturday?
Saturday.
Yeah, so he qualified 23rd and was knocked out in Q1.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
And he is a great steerer. We know that. And then Richie wasn't far ahead in fairness to them, and the times that we all know fucking broadcast talk about it enough that we know the times are very close at Symmons Plains, but he wasn't a long way ahead, but he did out-qualify him each time. Matty Payne was 19th on Sunday, so again, not a big improvement for him. So we know that it's the team there, not them. So Couchy, I didn't think it was necessary to have a bit of a dig, and I also didn't like, I'm protective of most drivers. Like, I'm a driver, so I do get defensive. But I didn't like that he topped practice, come into the garage, and his number one mechanic said well done, and he's a race engineer, and the rest of the garage looked like was doom and gloom.
Okay.
Like, until the end of the year, he's your driver, get around him, and it's an important time for Richie too to try and get his career on track. And even when someone's departing, you want them to succeed. Like, it doesn't matter, unless there's been something detrimental they've done to your business, you wish any employee good luck. So I'd love to see Richie do well at Sandown, Bathurst. He definitely should not win. If he fucking wins, I'll be annoyed. But you got to get around him because, you know, even as the team there, they should want to see Richie on the grid next year. They've got an awesome driver with Kyle and joining. There's no... they're going to do well. So let's... I don't know. It's my opinion anyway. I didn't think it was great.
A nice turnaround for Sunday was Jack LeBrock. He was P5. So, and on Saturday, like Matty Payne, he got bumped out in Q1.
Couldn't believe
22nd. So,
and he was fast in practice.
Yeah, so
LeBrock was very quick in practice.
Yeah, so that was a nice turnaround. So I don't know the reasons why he qualified like shit on Saturday, but they obviously turned it around overnight because he then stuck it in P5 for Sunday qual, which was nice. So good on Jacko for remembering.
Yeah, and Tom Moore is a good mate of ours as well, so it's hard to see your mate when he's down in 21. I always blame the engineer. So, Tom, I don't know what kind of shitbox you gave Jack on Saturday, mate. But
give him a decent car, mate.
Drivers don't forget, okay? This is all on you, Tom.
Correct.
You did well on Sunday, though. You gave the guy a weapon.
And we obviously don't want to skim across. Tommy Randall got his first pole Sunday in qual, which was... So, again, Saturday, he brought out the red flag by having a spin to then go on the pole. On Sunday,
it was like a full Billy spin as well. It was not, that was a wobbler spin, and then he comes out and poles it on Sunday. So he's in the who remembered day-to-day pile, that's for sure.
And I know on, early on in the weekend, seeing on social and stuff, people blowing up going, it's a Camaro Cup, Parity's fucked. But then obviously on Sunday, we had Fords lock out the front row in Tickford.
Yeah.
So Thomas Randall, Cameron Waters, 1-2 for quals. So, that kind of in my mind, put that to bed pretty quick. But... Yep.
Even last year, Walkinshaw were the most vocal about the parity, and Tickford were vocal, but at weekends like Darwin, where, Walkinshaw qualified exactly where they qualified this year. It had nothing to do with parity. Last year, they just sucked. And Waters was leading the race until his shitbox caught on fire.
Yeah, it's true.
So he would have won that race, and that was the weekend that spiked with this parity debate. Like, that was after that weekend last year, they went and talked about parity. Oh, hang on a minute. Like, a Ford was leading the race until it blew up.
Just caught fire,
It just caught fire. And so I actually think that Tickford do an amazing job on weekends where we looked at it and it's like, it was the Camaro Cup. There's only 2 cars in the top 10 that weren't a Camaro. And they were both Tickfords, 1 and 2. So I'm sorry, this was not a Camaro Cup. Like, it was... You could have a fast Ford. For whatever reason, at a track when it seems like the Camaros are dominant, the 2 Tickford cars defy the odds.
Will be the best Fords.
But then at a track when it's a Ford-dominated track, they're kind of where they are normally anyway.
Yeah, and Walkinshaw will be...
And Walkinshaw capitalise on it. So, I don't know. I mean, you look at Sunday qualifying and Sunday race, they were the fastest cars in both sessions, quali and the race.
Yeah.
So, a Ford had potential at Tassie, even though it looked like a Camaro Cup.
Yeah, they had a lot of speed. And, again, we'll talk about leading into Sandown. I think Cam's going to be really strong. He's won it in the past. He won it with Richie, actually.
Yeah.
The 500. So, they're coming on strong at the right time of the year too, Tickford, in both cars, in Thomas and Cam. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not stoked about hearing that, mate.
Sorry, mate.
I'm not. I don't want to be thinking about the possibility of those guys being competitive, but I think you're right. I think at Bathurst, Cam has done some spectacular laps in qualifying. He might be my pick for pole at Bathurst.
Really?
I honestly, calling that out early.
I'm going to watch a practice session yet. You'll just call that straight out the gate.
I actually would. I'd pick. We can call it now. I think Cam be the pick for pole.
You'll skip Sandown and you'll go straight to Bathurst qual. Okay, I like
it. But it doesn't always guarantee a race win.
No.
So,
we know that. That's right.
And I want car 87 to be the race winner.
That's right. Quality.
So I'm happy for him to take pole if they all give us the win.
Should we dive into the Sunday race results, mate?
Yeah, before we do, I wanted to talk about the Brody incident with Reynolds. And I think the penalty system has got to change because Brody took out David Reynolds in the race for like P4 or something. Brody looked fast too, by the way.
He did.
Started that race on Sunday, he was flying. But he's turned David Reynolds around. Shit happens, bad move, whatever. He's spun him around into locked wheels and it happens.
That looked like a wheel thing. Like the Andre Winterbottom one, Andre was like at his door. So that looked like that looked like a fuck you to me. But the Brody and Reynolds one looked like a, oh shit, we've bumped in the wrong spot. It's grabbed the wheel and flicked him.
Yeah, but the penalty system, like if I was Reynolds, I'd feel pretty hard done by because he was in pit lane, Brody this is, having repairs done, and they handed out a 15-second penalty. Like, what that means nothing to Brody.
He was 3 laps down, so
and then he gets a drive-through later. He got 2 drive-throughs, I think, in the race. But that penalty, I'm like, getting a 15-second penalty when you've spun. So if you spin another car, that has to be a drive-through penalty.
Yeah, if you ruin someone's race...
and if they react immediately, if there's a safety car, they're back in it and let them play on. But a drive-through, mate, it has to be. I don't see the point of a 15-second penalty when the other guy's sitting on the infield.
Also, if the car turns someone and gets damaged and goes in and has to pit for 3 laps, it should just be a points penalty or something. Like, because they've cooked their own race anyway, and I know they go, well, they've self-penalised, but they've also destroyed someone else's and another team's points and all that stuff. So, yeah, I see your point there.
Yeah, that's what upset me about that, and I think that that should be something that can be changed moving forward. Again, something doesn't need long to react on.
Yep. So
we are up to the best part of the show, I think, aren't we?
What's that?
The Who Forgot.
We can go straight into that, but we'll just touch on quickly the results from the race on Sunday.
Oh.
We probably should mention that.
Full rookie here.
Before we blaze into the good stuff.
I think I've clicked on the wrong page there, and I've just completely glazed over Sunday.
Good. I got lost in the maps before myself.
This is just for the listeners out there that see this as as our podcast. We're actually live streaming this right now, so this blunder will make it in for sure.
100%.
We do have a notes document we go through, and fucking quite regularly I skip the pages by accident, and I could end this podcast 20 minutes early.
Or 40 minutes late, just depends how carried away we get.
Yeah.
But,
so unfortunately we're live streaming, so that has to stay in. We can't get rid of that.
But we'll throw a couple of things. So for those of you who didn't watch the race or haven't watched it yet, spoiler alert, Cam Waters did win the race. And it was man, that race came alive, didn't there? Was some shit going on left, right and centre with about 15 to go.
It. Fucking loved the race.
It was good. We were streaming it. So for those that are listening that haven't been on any of our streams, jump on them because it's super entertaining.
Yeah.
We were streaming it with everyone that was on. I think we had like nearly 200 people watching it with us.
Today was really, really good. Like really good fun.
But there was just stuff going on. There was punches being thrown. So Waters got the win. Will Brown finished second. But big shout out to Brycey Fullwood.
Huge, mate.
Because he qualified well, I think qualified 6 or in the top 6 or 7
I can find that, mate. We've got it here for you.
What's he got?
Bryce Fullwood qualified P6.
6, there you go.
Sunday. So he was no slouch.
So he qualified really well, but then because of some of the blunders or the fuck-ups that happened late in the race, ended up getting 3rd. So that was awesome to see a BJR car on a podium because they had a bit of a rough day with some of their other cars, a rough weekend. But also nice for Bryce because he's been slogging away there with your ex-engineer, Phil. So nice for
Very good shout out to Phil Keed.
Yeah,
good to see him back on the podium as well.
Nice for those guys to get a result. So that was cool. But
you always need a bit of a boost too, because there are some rumours circulating around BJR at the moment and what's happening with them in the future. And I think that drivers like Andres, he's having a tough run at the moment. He's not having they're going to Sandown and they're not going to be full of confidence. I think even Brad in his post-race kind of glazed over Sandown and said, we're looking forward to Bathurst. Like they know Sandown's going to be tough. Yep. But for Bryce, which I did think was odd because Bryce had such a strong weekend because he was not slow in qualifying. He's fast in the race. He was within a couple of seconds. That's why he was able to capitalise like he did when there was an incident with Brock Feeney and Thomas Randall. So he was fast, and I loved seeing him get back on the podium. It's been a long time, but we all need that every now and then as a little
bit of sugar.
Little bit of sugar. Get you back up and about, mate.
Some of the late race arguments, I guess you could say, there was a few bingles.
The red mist descended on one driver in particular, which was I was pretty disappointed in that, actually. I think Randall did a good job all weekend after his little spin in qualifying, but again, it's qualifying. Fuck, if you crash in quali, who cares? You're just hanging it out there. But he did a good job in qualifying on Sunday, and then in the race was doing, he made the mistake on lap 1, which was the first sign of, it was a pretty bad mistake. I know he underestimated. He said that he thought he had more tyre temp, but he went so deep and his teammate was in P2. I thought it was unnecessary. There's no way. They could have had a pact that whoever led into the first corner, and they probably did, would lead the first lap. Frosty and I always had that. It was like you'd always defend your teammate, block the line he chooses not to take, so they get the preferred. Yep. Off you go. So to outbreak yourself on the first lap, I don't really think there's a good reason for it. And then, but he was having a good race in the middle part. And then at the end with like 10 to go, or 15 to go, I think he came together with Will. And his was the move Randall did was a classic bump and run. Like, for him to moan then after getting bump and run back, I thought was a bit, it was pretty stupid.
It wasn't a bump, it was a shove and run.
It was,
like,
he nailed,
it was a decent
he nailed
bump,
Will.
But I've got a couple of theories I've got a theory on it. So we've seen Thomas in these top 3 positions quite a bit recently. He's fast,
but
he seems to always get out-muscled. And he did at Townsville, and he has a couple of times in the
I think it's
past.
car positioning now more than being out-muscled, actually.
So I just think, because we saw the red mist come in and he was just trying to throw haymakers left, right and centre. He was doing the screaming windmill, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's because, this is just my theory, whether someone or he's had a look at himself and said, I just need to race hard, I need to get my elbows out more, and he's maybe just taken a step too far.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I think it looked like. And he knew he had a fast car. He had the fast lap of the race.
Yeah.
He was hauling ass. He made that blunder and gave away the lead on the first lap. He probably had a bit of the shits from that. And then, it just snowballed. And I think he went, fuck, I'm getting my elbows up. Everyone reckons I'm not aggressive enough, and just went hard. So
the mistake on Brock, like, usually when you trail off you brake and you know, okay, I've got a little bit of room here to trail off the brake, carry some more speed in, and then at the hairpin is a good spot. You can duck your nose down the inside and get a bit of an overlap, even if you bump him a bit and keep that.
Yeah.
But he's actually completely misjudged it as he's like trailed the speed into the corner. And then late realised, fuck, I can't pull this thing up, locked up, and just T-boned Brock. So, yeah, it definitely came crumbling down. And I think Cam, it actually showed the gap between the two. It's just something to work on. Like, there's no doubt that Tommy's fast, but the maturity, it will come, and I think that and, you know, I'm sitting here on the couch now as an expert with a cider in my hand, but it is one of those things, and it's not a criticism because it will change and it will get better and better. He's only a few years in. It just seemed like that his racecraft there, he tried to be, like you said, over-aggressive.
I almost think he needed today, though, to then, you know, pull himself back and try and find that sweet spot. You know, sometimes...
You got to have a crack.
It's sometimes like quali, you got to go out and run it off the road and fuck it up to then find that sweet spot. And I think I'm hoping for him that he then now he learns from being maybe too soft.
Yep.
He's now gone too hard. Hopefully he can find that sweet spot because, as you said, he's getting given a regular fast car now.
Yeah.
On a regular basis. To be honest, I know he'll be feeling like shit about it, and it was a shocker for him. But Jesus, add some spice to the race, and for the fans at home,
it was unreal.
It just turned the race on its head, and just everyone's got up about on the edge of the seat for the last sort of 15 laps. So,
well, even his move, like, and it actually sounded like I gave him a beat up, but it was only the one move really that was, the little mistake on one that happens, but the one move on Brock was the only real mistake because the move he actually put on Will, was
hard
awesome, like hard racing. Of course, he would have had to redress that.
Yeah.
But fuck, who cares? He had a crack, got down the inside, do that a couple of times and make it work. Like you've got the win. And I think that what he did on Will was great. So keep that up. And it was just you overstepped it a little bit on Brock is all.
Yep. No, I agree, mate. I agree.
The Fords have had a great run recently, and Parity was a bit of a talking point going into this weekend. But I actually think that this weekend did show the Fords. It's like some of the teams need to do better on the weekends where they're not expected to be that competitive. Like a DJR.
It's like they drop their head almost.
It's almost like they accept that this isn't going to be a strong track. And then some teams, like a Walkinshaw on Saturday, they dug deep and did the 3 tyres and they dragged themselves back into contention again.
Yep.
Sunday, Tickford, they did just an unbelievable job.
Yep.
So there's the potential for the Ford. It's just it maybe on those weekends takes a little bit more grit.
It's a little bit harder, yeah.
And, so don't drop your chin as early maybe and accept defeat before attempting to beat them, if that makes any sense. That was I just made a note of that. I thought that was something that was worth noting, and it's not like as simple as saying Ford just do better. Like they've been doing amazing.
Be less shit.
But it's maybe some of those weekends, and the same goes for the Camaros too. I think what Tickford showed on Sunday is on a weekend when
you've got speed.
You think a Ford team is dominant. If you actually execute and nail the setup with a Camaro, you can still trump a Ford on those weekends because Tickford proved you could do it on a weekend when the Camaro seemed to be the most dominant.
And on the other side too, let's just say it was more suited to a Camaro this weekend. Don't get complacent because then the Ford's pipped you for 1-2 on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's no... Yeah, it's just a competitive championship.
Yeah, and that's why I say earlier, it put the parity stuff to bed for me because everyone was doing the same times essentially. I think at one point in one of the quali sessions, one of the parts of quali, 50.8 was like there was 5 or 6 cars on it.
Yeah.
And they were all different makes.
I do get annoyed a little bit with when they talk in broadcast how close the times are in Tasmania, because there was still like half a second covering top 20, which you go to Bathurst and there's a second covering top 25. It's a 2-minute something lap. This is a 50-second lap. Like, I think we get it. It's close.
It's tight. Yeah, of course it's going to be tight because it's a shorter track.
Hell. Like, okay, we get it. It's close. It's a short track.
Let's dive into the fan favourite. Drum roll.
I think it's my favourite too.
Who forgot?
Maddie Payne, and I've actually put in there and Groves because, I just feel like they weren't that competitive. Maddie Payne, I don't know. I put in Groves because they've pulled that car out of the shit a few times this year and they weren't able to do it this weekend. I thought it was odd on Sunday that under the safety car they decided to keep him out. I thought that was a risky move by going, okay, like there's going to be double stacking and, they caught the train, so they were always going to go to the back. I didn't really understand that. So I did feel like Matty Payne, unfortunately, went from a podium in Simmons Plain and Sydney Motorsport Park, to down the back, so he definitely forgot. But I did put a bit of an asterisk there on Groves because they've been doing a great job with strategy. Yep. They kind of forgot and dropped the ball.
Yeah, I've put, obviously, you can't not do Percat from winning the race on Saturday to qualifying dead last on Sunday. We know why that was, but...
We've actually, there's another little asterisk on the team, though.
Yeah.
Because the car was actually fast. So it wasn't like where Percat qualified was out of position. But it's like the team kind of forgot. So it's like Groves have been doing a great job with strategy, and then they forgot strategy with a car that obviously wasn't quick.
You touched on it. It was just risky, and it was like they forgot how competitive the championship was.
Don't underestimate the other guys.
Yeah. So that was also one. And then, you probably got to throw Tommy in there for Sunday because he put it on pole and then...
How wild is it that we've picked who forgot as the bloke who got pole position on Sunday?
It's like he was drinking Bundy or something through his drink tube and he just started throwing punches left, right, and centre because
punchy.
He was dead set on with 10 laps to go. He was dead set on for a podium.
Yeah,
he was on third at worst case if he just rolled around. And we've explained he got the gloves off and went hard, but so.
Well, that's it, mate. Who remembered now? Let's go into that bad boy.
Who remembered? Touched on it, Brycey Fullwood, third on Sunday. And I think you mentioned it earlier, mate. He was fast all weekend. He did a good job. That Middies car looked like it was in the top 10 sort of every session somewhere. So
he was getting mentioned in practice. He was doing a great job.
Yep.
Very quick all weekend. So Bryce,
well done.
Holy shit, definitely remembered. I don't know what you had for breakfast, but keep doing that. The other one was, for me, I thought Jack LeBrock. Now, I'm getting a bit annoyed about this because I always like to just say that the drivers don't forget. It's not their fault. But Tommy's his engineer. I don't know that you can really tune the car up day to day because Friday in practice, he was very quick. Jack was he set the benchmark for that team.
Yeah.
And then he rolled out on Saturday, qualified 22nd. And then he rolls out Sunday and qualifies 5th. So Jack had a bit of, I don't know what was going on. He's forgetting, remembered. And Sunday he did a very good job. But to go 22nd on Saturday, he then remembered on Sunday. So, yeah, odd one there. I just thought that was an odd one, actually, because he was quick in practice, and then Saturday qualifying, I think, was actually a bit of an anomaly. Yep. So we have put him down as a who remembered.
Yep. No, they're good ones. And we'll roll into the team points. And one thing that I think was which no doubt Tickford would have already debriefed and probably knew at the time, but one thing that was really disappointing by Randall missing out on that podium, which he would have had home and hosed, was it probably would have jumped them to second in the team's point. If he'd finished in third where he was sitting with Cam winning, a first and third, I think would have put them in second in the team's point. So, obviously it had a negative impact on Thomas's results himself, but also it directly affected the team. They could have been second in pit lane next round at Sandown.
I agree. And we actually said in the last podcast that there's a lot of credit going to Randall because Ryan Wood, actually, I didn't even touch on that, but with his signing, I thought was a little bit of a surprise to me to sign to extend him this early. When I think Ryan's a good driver, but I think he's been a long way off Chaz.
Right.
But he has kind of let down WAU as he's let them down, but you got to then take into consideration he's a rookie.
Yeah, of course.
So he's up against teams with 2 experienced drivers. So it's not a bad thing as in he's let them down. It's just
it was a big ask.
The odds are stacked against him. So Walkinshaw, is really one car they're fighting against, and Randall has done well to be a good close second.
Yep.
So this weekend, had he capitalised on Sunday, there's a potential they'd be second in the team's points, which would be great.
Yep.
But also, I can't beat the bloke up too much because there's probably a good reason they were second going into the weekend in teams. Like they were actually after Sydney, they were.
Yep.
On a weekend that Chaz dominated too. So,
Yep.
Yes, difficult. But in the team's points on that, Red Bull's still miles ahead.
Yeah.
Walkinshaw P2, Cam and Chaz with Monster and Castro in P3. Shells P4, they're just little quiet achievers hanging in there. But Penrite, on weekends like this is where I think they're giving away a shitload of points. Because
100%.
Shell didn't have a strong weekend either, but then the race on Sunday for Matty Payne was a disaster. So threw away a lot of points. Matty Stone in 6th.
It's quite tight too, mate. From Matty Stone up to Shell, so from 6th to 4th, I think it was only like 30, 40 points. Not a lot in it. So that can swing and sway pretty easily.
Yep. Maybe. I mean, Cameron Hill made a mistake on Sunday's race. He qualified well, locked the front. I think it went wide at 6, dropped to last. So had that not happened, that would have been 30 points in there probably, and they would be 4th in teams, which would be wild. So, yeah, Matt Stone would be one to watch then, I would say, coming out of Sandown. And then Erebus and Team 18, obviously, they're going to be disappointed with that, particularly Erebus. Just Brodie's getting caught up in a lot of incidents this year, like just a lot of stuff. So he's still, we'll get to it with drivers' points, but I'll skip ahead a little bit because he's still 23rd in the teams, in the drivers' points, which things happen throughout a season, but he's been quick at times, not standout, but he's just caught up in a lot of incidents and they're nowhere. Like as a team to win the championship and then be 7th is just blows me away still to this point that team's fell so much when there's still a lot of consistency in the group.
Yeah. Surprised me a little bit because...
Continuity. So a lot of continuity in the group.
Through a couple of qual sessions and stuff, he was throwing purples here and there, and I thought... I had that feeling like, fuck, Brodie's on this weekend.
Yeah.
Like, I reckon he's going to be back on the podium, but then it just never came to fruition. So...
there was glimmers in there that I thought the same.
Just on the team stuff before we jump into the drivers stuff, mate. Obviously, Red Bull are miles ahead in the team's points. And really, it's, 2nd to 6th, so there's still... I mean, we've got some big races coming up. Anything can happen, but obviously Red Bull are sort of a fair way up the road there at the moment. But, yeah, it's really tight between WAU and Monster Castrol Racing.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting.
It is going to be tight up there. And then Brad Jones Racing, mate, they're having a tough year.
Yeah.
Like, I know that Forward just got a weekend like this, but...
as a group, they're
having a tough
season. They've had some damage, unfortunately, for Brad and the team, and they're just not getting the results that they deserve.
And there was an incident on Sunday between Aaron Love and Jackson Evans.
Yeah, a lot of damage.
100% on Aaron Love. Sorry, Jordan Love.
Aaron Love, Jordan's his older brother.
So Aaron, unfortunately, moved across the track and fenced Jackson Evans, and I'm sure he didn't do it intentionally. It was a complete... No. He wasn't looking in the mirrors. And so, that's going to be a big repair for them. I imagine Brad's going to be pretty pissed off about that. So you've got two of those teams with Blanchard and Brad's down the bottom and crashing like they were. I mean, there was some guys battling. We joked about it. Matty Payne was in second last and they're door banging like it was for a podium position.
Yeah.
So I think there's a few guys there that have torn cars up now.
Yeah.
That'll have a good hard look at himself after this weekend. But he'll be gutted because they've had a race win this year.
Yeah.
They've had a podium now. To be 10th in the teams with a win and I don't know if they've had multiple podiums, but they have the potential to be a lot further up than 10th in the teams.
Yeah, just shows those wild inconsistencies that you tend to see with those teams that are either running too many cars or under-resourced or whatever the reasons are. But as you say, you go from winning to 20th.
Yeah.
Back-to-back weekends and things like that. It's wild.
Yep, it is definitely. What about, do you want to go into the drivers' points then? Because it's still very close.
Yep, so we got Will Brown still leading by Chaz Mozzie, and then Brock Feeney third. Waters in fourth, but he must be getting close now.
Yeah, it was disappointing for Brock to get taken out at the end of that race because the battle for the top three, and it was only, he dropped down to 16, so I don't actually know if he ended up with damage. Could have just been the rear quarter was dragging and it was
fair hit in the rear.
Yeah, so that was disappointing because I think that the championship battle, you never want to interfere with that. Like it's, and Randall kind of just blew that wide open because Brock was ahead and he probably would have finished second. And then that would have given him a good chance to close that gap back up to Chaz.
Yep.
Cameron Waters, right in there, he said in the press conference that he feels like he's got his pinky on the title as well. He's had fingertips on it for a while, but now he's getting slowly getting closer up there. But it's still a big gap. But it is a battle of the four because Matty Payne, I'm surprised that he's still fifth, to be honest. But I think Percat's going to jump up there after Sandown. I can see Percat actually having a good Sandown and jumping them both. Jumping Matt Payne, sorry.
And look, and that's why, and the drivers have been saying in all the broadcasts, but really looking at the drivers' points until you at least get through Bathurst or Sandown at least, because they're big point swings weekends where if a Cowie has a drama or something happens to the car, you have a mechanical failure or something, there's 300 points.
You can have a huge swing.
Yeah, so I think Chaz says a lot. Look, there's no point talking about till we get through enduros and stuff, and it's true.
Yeah.
So the team point stuff's probably more interesting at this point because with the live pit lane, I think that adds something that's a little bit cool to it.
That's been a positive for this year.
I love it, mate. I think it's great, and I think.
And there's no. I always say there's no guaranteed performance based on past performance. So every time you go to the track, you start again.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but I know Betty was upset about losing the garage. Shane never ran number one because he said when you roll up to round one, you're on 0 points again, you start again. You won the championship the year before. And I think that if you're good, you maintain garage one. And if you're not, you lose it. And I think that the moving pit lane, I think is great. They didn't deserve to keep it. Like really, like you look at them now, they definitely didn't deserve to keep P1. They're not a top team.
No.
And I think that
you couldn't have it. You couldn't
crying, but I think crying about losing your garage, it's like just get on with it and try and you're in control of that. Yeah. So go out there and try it. But I think the moving pit lane is good because it's almost like you arrive at a track and it's you should use it as a motivating factor. Like if you move back one garage, it's a physical thing you see and you go, fuck, I want to be back there. So and there should be a motivating factor, not something to just moan about.
Especially for the crew, I think too, every weekend as well. Yeah. They're like, shit, I want to be in that bay.
Yep.
So I'm going to make sure I know, because it's a reward that they get the next weekend. It's not saying they have to wait till the next year to see the fruits of their labour. So, yeah, I agree, mate. I think it's a cool thing.
Okay, so additional talking points. We've added this in because there was just a few things that I saw on broadcast. Like, number one is for me, the amount of talk about droop restriction. Fuck me. It's like it was a competition on broadcast of who could explain droop restriction better.
Yeah.
It started with Garth, then it went to Scafey, and then it went to Larko. And then even Crompo was like, maybe in the broadcast we could have Larko explain even more about the shocks. And I'm like, fuck, it went on. And this was particularly through practice. And it led into then Saturday as well. And they were then showing slow-mos. I get it. It is cool to understand how the shocks work and how we get the cars to turn is important to understand, but I think that sometimes broadcasts need to just fucking call it. We're trying to be the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah, I think sometimes it goes over a lot of the people at home head, and that's no disrespect to them, but like, I'm not an engineer.
It's not relevant to the quality of the product.
Yeah, that's right. So I think if you want to talk about something like that, do one segment with Larko once across the weekend.
It comes back to
not all the time,
but it comes back to as well. Like, and I love it with Larko. Like, I think what he does is great. But it comes back to the fact where we don't actually have a professional broadcaster. We don't have someone that has commentated on horse racing and darts and fucking everything. Like Crofty in F1 has done darts. So he's looking at how can I make the sport exciting or entertaining for the people back home, whereas our guys are talking about what's interesting to us. Yeah. What do we think is interesting? And we don't, talking about droop restriction. It's the Larko segments are fantastic because I think we actually have really educated fans because of segments like that. But sometimes, you need a broadcaster to go, okay, that's enough about that. Let's get back to trying to make this show exciting for those sitting on the fans. And what do we talk about there? That's where the professional comes into it.
Well, and we see it a lot in practice, mate. And it's probably because they're trying to pad out friggin' 90 minutes of practice.
But that's where a pro will come in and having talked about different sports. Yeah. They don't get tied up on the nitty-gritty detail of the sport itself. So that was something. And then Lownsy's camera.
I text you about this.
You did. I put this in straight away when you text.
I think they trialled this in
Darwin.
And I was like, what the hell is going on? Like the camera's on the piss. It's on his hat or something. And I noticed they had Lownsy's cam again. And I happened to be watching practice while I was at work on Friday. And first thing I did when I saw was I text Scotty and I was like,
the quality is dog shit.
It's just, I just think it's shit. And I again, like you say about Scaife, I love Lownsy as a race car driver and stuff like that. I don't really want to hear him talk about commentary and stuff. I just want to see the guy drive a race car because he's amazing. And I just think it's
and that's rubbish. Where none of them should take this personally because They are the best race car drivers we've seen in the country.
100%.
And there is no doubt, like Scafie, I'm such a fanboy of Scafie. Like, it's not like I'm not, but now I'm sitting on the couch and I was like, even I'm a little bit tired of some of the explanations. And then even the camera, the Lowndes cam, the quality is really low and I'm not sure why, but his head shakes a lot. Like, it's not a steady cam. He's not a chicken, okay? So the Lowndes cam's got to go, or just use his iPhone and use the zoom because the quality of that fucking camera in his head is terrible. Yeah.
Category changes, mate. You put a few things down that you felt would be positives.
Yeah, and I think probably coming into Enduros, I wanted to make some notes about the pit stops. I think that if we increase the speed from 40 to 60 kilometres an hour would be a real positive for the championship because then your time in the lane would be less. And there's I know there are other podcasts that have talked about this, but this actually, I'll give credit where it's due. I spoke to Roland Dane at our Queensland Raceway test day, and we are doing a pod with him. He said that he's going to come on. He was meant to do one last week, but he mentioned some really good points, and he was the first, this was a while ago, he told me this, the 60K pit lane would help teams then go, okay, like there's less time in pit lane, so we can take an extra stop, or, it would put it more in the engineer's hand because the 40 it's a long pit lane time, right?
Yep. And
then what you should do, because 60, our car is not like Formula One where it's nimble and light and stops on a dime. We are 1.5 tonne with an undergrip tyre already. So if we're doing 60k an hour in the pit lane onto a concrete patch and hitting some guy on a boom, we're going to slide and we're going to slide a fucking long way.
Yeah.
So he said what we should do, you come in at 60, you pull up and no one's allowed to cross the line until the car stops, just like GT.
Yeah, perfect.
Right? Have a guy on the side with the boom, like GT, and then you stop and the fuel guy can connect, increase the fuel flow rate for the cars so that the fuel flow rate is fast, right? Yep. And then the guys can't change the wheel until the fuel is done so that there's pressure on the crew. And I loved it. As he's talking, I'm like, this is so good. I just love the idea of, you put the pressure back on the crew so the pit stop is really critical. And then when you do get a win, the crew is up and about.
Yeah.
The TV gets to see if a gun fails, well, they're out of the race.
Yep.
You're not covered by fuel being fucking 30 seconds.
Yep.
And then you see, the faster pit lane time. So you might see people take a bit of a punt with a late safety car or something like that where they can trundle down the lane at 60 instead of 40.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's how they do it in GT3 and GT4 in Australia. The one thing with that, waiting for the fuel to be done, though, it does mean the stop's going to be longer.
Yeah, but then by increasing 60, like at some places, you'll save 15 seconds.
Yeah, as you said, as long as, I think, which is RD what told you, it could increase the fuel flow into the car a lot more, then it wouldn't be so bad.
What he's saying as well is if you have 60k an hour pit lane speed, if someone at the end is a safety car and they're like 12th, they might pit for tyres. Whereas right now, you're not going to do it because it's 40k's an hour.
You lose too much.
You lose way too much time. So you'll go, okay, we'll pit and take the punt with some tyres and try and come through because you don't lose as much track position.
As a spectacle too, mate, like especially at places like Adelaide where all the corporates are above pit lane, it would make it look a lot cooler too if they were just doing 20k an hour faster.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. And there is the safety aspect, and I don't underestimate that because I've had moments where you've come in and you slide a long way. Walshy, a mate of mine, broke someone's ankle on a test day doing pit stop practice. So 40 in a tonne and a half car is pretty quick. It actually does take a bit to stop it.
They said if no one's over the line and it's just a paddle that's out there,
come in at 60.
All you're going to do is hit a paddle. Who cares?
Exactly. And then if you slide way past your box, well, you fucked it. Like
team has to pull you back.
It puts more on all the little 1%ers in the pits.
Yeah, that's good.
And I love endurance racing because I really enjoy, or even the long races, because I like seeing the crew participate in the outcome of the race.
Yep.
It's just like you've got 15, 20 people that if you get a result and they've contributed like to it in the moment, of course they fix the car and they tune it up and everything. But if you're in a race, you put the helmet on, come in pit lane, they are like the atmosphere is totally different. So when they come out and they're fist bumping. So I think if you get rid of the fuel, it actually, when they nail a pit stop, change the wheels faster than the other blokes, they'll be up and about.
Yeah, good ideas. I like it.
But yes, it is the dangerous aspect isn't actually really a question because 60
no one's
60
in the lane.
compared to there's no one in the lane.
Yeah.
So there's you would not do it with the rules the way they are today.
No.
Because you'd kill 10 people every weekend. But come in at 60 with the pit lane empty, 100% fine. No problem at all.
No, I really like that. I think it's great.
Well, we're up to the fan memos. So we've got to put the I'll do my sound check. I've got another side here. I've got a big night ahead of me. I'm going to be here for a long time, so I'm on the next one.
Lovely.
I'll be here until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So we've got a few here. All right, we'll start with Adam, well, actually, the fan memo, I do want to say as well, cheers to everyone that commented and said keep it in, because we did it the first time. We were pissing ourselves, and I didn't know if anyone else was going to find this funny. But the fan memo, so we put online in socials, and do go follow our Apex Hunters United Instagram, Facebook and stuff, because we'll post before we do a podcast about, asking fans to either ask questions to our guests. So we'll play your voice memo. You can ask your fan your question. And if you want to say something funny on our podcast when we do these debriefs, by all means, go for it. If it is too rude, we can
edit it out.
But 2 hours ago, we got Adam Jepson.
Hey, boys. How are we going to remove these teams from the controlling power they have in Supercars and return it back to a day where a person looked after the category for the category's best interests, not just what the teams want?
It's a good one.
That's a really good question. I actually asked Roland this. I said, why do we, as a category, communicate so closely with the teams? Like, why are the teams involved in every decision? Because I feel like every team has a vested interest, right? They're always trying to look out for themselves, and that it slows the process down. And I was always like, why do we even ask them on every decision? And I thought maybe they had to. Roland said they actually don't need to ask the teams every time they do something for permission or what do you think, but they go to the masses. And I think it's because. So, well, anyway, he said to me they don't have to. It's not the rule. They don't have to go to the teams. But I think that when management make a decision, sometimes they like to get the strength of the group, like everyone to be accountable for that decision, because they don't have the confidence in the group themselves to make the decision without everyone else. So I think Supercars at a management level
lacks leadership.
It lacks leadership, and I think that sometimes they go to the team owners to go, oh, what do you guys think? So that if it doesn't work, well, not one person's accountable, but also because they might not actually feel like they know the answer themselves. So they go to them and they get involved, then it drags out, because it is a good question. A lot of decisions in the category take longer than they need to, and development of components or cars or who's getting the contract to make the bits takes way longer because too many teams are involved in that, and it should just be a supercar level thing.
Yeah, well, it's like, to put it at a very basic level, if you were to ask 24 people what they wanted for dinner instead of 5, it's going to take you forever and you're going to end up with a shit sandwich, mate.
Well, a good example was the steering wheel for Gen 3.
Yeah.
And I thought this was unbelievable. So at Simmons Plains a couple of years ago, it was a few years ago now, they were bringing the steering wheel around and asking every driver, because they wanted it to be a controlled part, the buttons are in the same spot for every driver, right? So you get what you get. And they asked every single driver where they would like the buttons positioned on the steering wheel. And this went on for multiple events. It got to Tasmania and they come to me. And I was like, are you fucking serious? Are we still talking about this steering wheel? Like, there's 24 of us. Just
put it where you want and we'll work it out.
And I actually said, I don't care. Like, I'll drive what you give me, because we need to at some point make a decision. Like, every driver, if you ask every one of us, we're going to have something different. We like our thumb position to be different. We want the drink bottle on this side. We want it that high. We don't want it there. Every person's different. It's like when you get a road car. You put the seat to where you want it. There's no person in the world that have the exact same spot. And it's like, fuck me, we went around for events about a steering wheel with button positions. Like, really? And that was, again, that was what I mentioned to RD. I was like, I just couldn't believe how long it took to lock in the button position on a steering wheel, because they're asking 24 people for their opinion. They should have just, one person, ask one driver, go to Chaz in a leadership group or something, go, what do you reckon? And then we get what we get. But good question.
Yeah, thanks, Adam.
I don't have the answer. I think Supercars need to back themselves a little bit more, though.
Yeah.
Next one. Nathan.
I've sent about 4 messages already, working this thing out. Yeah, good race, enjoyed it. Good to see a bit of emotion with all the drivers, is what I was thinking. Like, you could just sort of see in the interviews. Thomas Randall, though, forgot how to drive. Seems to have got a few fans around the place, though. Not sure how.
I think having a crack.
Nathan, yeah, I mean, look, yeah, we touched on the pod. He probably overstepped in some spots, but we know Thomas, he's a great guy. He does have a big fan base. He's got some great sponsors on board and stuff like that. But, I mean, as you said, we love seeing the emotion, and he had a crack. And, look, you're not always going to get it right. And sometimes when you have a crack, you fuck it up. And that was today. But, I'm not going to shit can the bloke for having a go. I mean, I'd much rather see people stuff up and have a go for a win versus just roll around comfortably in third. So
100%. That's probably why he's picked up some fans too. So
yeah.
The other one on the weekend was Andre Heimgartner was pretty vocal. It was like, for whatever reason this year, his fuse is a bit shorter. So he said, if you cross paths with me and I don't like it, I will get you back. And I'm like, good on you. Like, I think all that should be encoured. I don't think fans should hate anyone for talking like that.
And he said it now, so he's got to serve someone at some point.
He did. No,
he served Winterbottom.
It was Winterbottom. So, but I think fans like that. It is a bit of authenticity out of the drivers.
Yeah, let's start getting some of those personalities.
Yeah, for sure. And Nathan, you did well, mate. We only got one coming from you, so you might have thought you sent 4, but you
good job.
Johnny.
Hey, legends. Yeah, there was a bit of a rinse and repeat this weekend. I don't understand why they needed a 20-minute practice session this morning before qualifying. That's just utterly fucking brain dead. Brody's penalty, that's just... What's 2 PLPs going to do when the guy's plumb last? He probably should get it done at Sandown. And Randall's penalty probably should have been a PLP as well. But all in all, pretty ordinary weekend. I'm glad you boys had Twitch going because it kept me going this weekend. Keep it up, legends.
Oh, thank you, Johnny.
Thanks, Johnny.
I mean, I actually agree regarding the penalties. The rinse and repeat, 100% on practice. I thought the weekend, though, I did enjoy. But I do agree with the penalties. I don't agree that you should carry a penalty over to the next event. I think that you rock up at Sandown with the same starting point as everyone else. But, the penalty system, there's got to be points for something. Like, that meant nothing to him. He got 2 drive-throughs and a 15-second penalty. Yeah,
and I agree with the Randall one too. Like, he's rooted Brock's weekend from a podium as well. Should have been more than 15 seconds.
It's a joke, mate, yeah.
Should have been a PLP at least. So,
well, what's 15 seconds at a track like, say, Bathurst, right? Like, it's stretched out. Of course, Simmons Plains 15 seconds big, but when you start handing out a 15-second penalty for the same incident at different tracks, it doesn't work because 15 seconds at Simmons is big, but then you go to another one, and if they're going to issue the same penalties for those incidents, it's a lesser of an impact, like on the outcome of the result. So it does need a change. But thank you, Johnny.
We got a couple through, which was nice. I know we put it on you guys late because we obviously went from the stream. We had about a half an hour to do some quick prep and then dive into this. So we appreciate those that are sending the voice memos through. It's something that we want to keep going. I think they're great value. I love, we started this because we wanted to give a driver's point of view, but also be a voice for the fans as well.
Yes, and that's why we've live streamed it too. Like, this podcast, it takes me fucking ages to edit because I don't use AI to switch the cameras. That's my biggest thing is I like to go through and watch the podcast and make sure that every audio bit's as good as I can make it and then switch the cameras myself. So it takes a while, but I keep it as authentic as possible. This is like 2 mates sitting on a couch. We have notes, we definitely make notes, but it's so that we can keep some kind of progress. But we want to be as transparent as possible, right? And that's why, live streaming tonight is awesome. And then we can actually, I have kept an eye on Twitch, and if we see something come in that we think's relevant, we can talk about. If there's feedback as well, jump in, put it in our comment section. Don't be afraid to tell us that if there's a segment you do or don't enjoy, do it, because if we're doing the same shit in 12 months' time, then I think we've failed. We've got to keep
100%
changing what we're doing. I did want to ask you quickly before we switch off, because I did see this pop up in the Twitch thing a couple of times tonight as well. After the incident with Randall, I did really like how he owned it.
100%.
But what did you think about Duddo not letting him in the garage with that invisible line? Like, you did ask me, but there's no way. That line thing is not a thing.
Yeah, no, look, I don't think it was the right thing to do. I don't like it in the past when I've had a problem with the driver and I've gone down to confront them or vice versa. I don't think the team should ever get involved. I think it's a driver-to-driver thing. I know the teams are invested in it and they'll have emotions around what happens on track, fine. But for me, whether there was or there is an internal, which you said there's not policy where other drivers aren't in the garage, I don't know. But if it was me, I just would have said, mate, Brock's in the truck. If Brock said, I don't want to talk to anyone, just say he doesn't want to talk to anyone. Sorry, mate, I'll get him to come see you later, or vice versa. I thought it was a bit harsh. Thomas was already probably feeling like a bag of shit anyway. And then to go up and to get that sort of reception from that team would have made him feel 1,000 times worse. It was probably unnecessary.
Yeah.
We saw Jamie being very different. Jamie was like, thanks for coming down, mate. Brock's in the truck. He'll see you later, which was probably more of a professional approach.
It was. The only thing I would say that I was thinking about it as you were speaking, because I'm 100% on your side, but when you watch NASCAR, the crews, the crew actually, the pit stop crew aren't the mechanics on the cars as such. They change the wheels and they are like they're out there, that is their race. Like, they're actually part of the race. And I think that in supercars, sometimes I reckon the crew should feel more a part of that result. And like with Randall taking out Brock the way he did, the crew is also hard done by that. So I think they're entitled to be pissed off. And I thought that Jamie was very polite about it in a way that I thought he should have been like, fuck off, he's in the truck, come back and find him later or something, or we'll go speak to him, and if he wants to talk to you, he'll reach out. You know, like, I appreciate he's gone down there and owned it. I think that's good, but I don't think what Dutto did, I actually don't mind it, because when you do look at NASCAR, the whole team wins and loses together. So like saying a team manager or something shouldn't be involved, I've always agreed with until we started watching NASCAR. Now I'm like, actually, they are part of the result. Like, we're talking about wanting crews to feel more involved in the outcome of the result with pit stops and things. Randall ruined their day too, so they have every right to be pissed off just as much as the driver does, because they worked hard, and that cost Dutto. And I like seeing Dutto still as passionate about it. He's won a shitload and he's got a lot of podiums. J-Dub was very professional, and that's why he's a team owner. Like, that sets an example for everyone up and down the lane. But I actually like seeing the crews get a bit fired up.
No, I'm about the passion and stuff, but I don't know. I just don't think you can still be passionate, and I don't know. I don't think it was executed perfectly.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that as well.
I'm not saying I'm against, like, you say they're heavily invested in it, and they've spent a weekend away from their families to try and get a result. And when someone dicks you over, you've got the shits with them.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what some people in the comments immediately I saw, like, slamming Dutto. They probably don't realise that, he's spent the weekend away from his family too.
Yeah.
He's stood in front of that car in pit lane, and they've contributed to the performance, and then a guy wipes you out, and everyone always puts the pressure and the glory on the driver because their name's in the window.
Yeah.
But those guys would be fuming. Like, I remember I took out Davo at Townsville, and it was bad. I clipped the curb at turn 3, ran him up into the wall, and I didn't mean to fence the guy, but the wall kicks out at the exit of turn 3 in Townsville, and I fenced him, and he turned me around, took me out. His day was done as well. And his crew, I went to the airport that night, and oh my God, I've never felt so uncomfortable. I felt like 15 blokes wanted to kill me. And I was like, fair. Like, I think that I ruined their weekend. Those poor blokes worked so late at night, and then I took them out of the race. And Davo was upset with me, and I was like, I actually only spoke to Davo. And I'm like, you don't think to talk to the mechanics or go to the team manager and go, fuck, I'm sorry to your whole team, I've ruined your day.
Yeah. No, I agree. I just think it was really big of Thomas. One thing that shits me to tears is there's a lot of people at the moment that will crash into someone, turn someone around or whatever, and then they just never go down and say anything.
Oh, yeah.
And that drives me insane. Like, if you fuck up and dump someone, just go, my bad, I fucked up.
Go down and talk to them.
Or at least just apologise or tell them they're a wanker or whatever you want to say, but don't just hide and not say anything.
Yeah.
That just does my nut in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good on Thomas for owning it.
I hope the rivalries carry on, though, as well, because what Thomas did was good. I think it was aggressive. He obviously overstepped it. I think what what Heimgartner did was, he turfed someone, but I don't know that it was unprovoked. I think there was some stuff that happened between those two. So we need some excitement up and down the lane.
You know what, though? It's kind of cool that we've had a couple of potential rivalries rolling into the first Enduro.
What's that, sorry, mate?
We've had a couple of, are you listening, mate? We've had a couple of potential rivalries right before the Enduro.
Yeah,
so it's
and
rolling up
nice
to like a big race. So, and with that becomes Coe's. So if a main driver's got the shits with someone, the Coe's automatically going to have the shits with that car as well.
Yeah.
So it's double the fun.
It is. Like, I feel like I'm rolling into the Enduros only 4 weeks out, and I'm like, I don't know. This is the first weekend I've watched Will and been like, really invested in like how his weekend goes, but I'm not out there to settle any scores for anyone. Like, I don't know, the co-driver role for me is like, I just want to try and help Will get his result, but I reckon there could be some stuff in Sandown where I don't think Brock's the guy to carry it on, but I think you're right. It's the right time of the year for this shit to be happening, and I hope that it does get hammed up, not artificially.
No.
Nothing needs to be artificial because there's legit rivalries there, but I think it's a cool time of the year to see a few of them having a big dip. And the championship, like, there's some, I know you need to do well for your team, but teams need to give drivers some freedom to have some fun out there and actually go race each other hard.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just going to be boring. And it is as much in our control as drivers and teams to turn the show on and make this product decent again so we can actually do a TV deal and people want to tune in and watch. Because this weekend, actually changed our podcast tonight.
Oh.
This weekend, we were actually going to talk about IndyCar. We were going to talk about some other stuff, which we actually will anyway, because I want to talk about what Scotty's doing and stuff in IndyCar. But I said to you today, I'm like, fuck, that was a good show tonight, like this weekend.
Well, it's probably already been over an hour.
Yeah.
An hour and a bit.
And so if the product's good, and that's down to people like Randall having a crack,
yeah.
You know, there was incidents that actually shit to talk about.
Yeah.
And when I make clips, there's actually relevant stuff to talk about. So
yeah.
Hopefully Supercars don't just drop the ball now between now and Sandown, and we see some good content come out of this.
I'm sure we will.
I'm sure the Drivers podcast will be very tame and filtered, but this one...
I don't know what that is.
But anyway, it has been a very unique pod, one that's been a little bit nerve-wracking. We have live streamed this, and we're going to continue to do it on Twitch. If you want to check us out,
Yep.
It's Apex_Hunters_United on Twitch, and you can... the reason we decided to live stream our pods as well is because I'm racing at the Sandown 500, I'm then racing at the Bathurst 1000, and we are aiming to do a live stream at either Gold Coast or Adelaide. If we can get some support and make that happen, will be amazing. But we decided let's live stream our podcast because we don't really edit them anyway. What you see is what you get.
Make sure with Spotify too, you subscribe, but you like us, but you also do the auto downloads.
Yes, that would be much appreciated, please. That way as well, you got it in your downloads. If you're flying or anything like that, you've got us there.
Yep.
And subscribe to YouTube. We're very new to this, but the sport's been unreal, and we do need your support to keep this ball moving. What's our next podcast?
Well, it's probably going to be either a guest. Well, it'll be a guest probably before
It'll be
Sandown.
a guest, and then Sandown. So maybe a post with me, hopefully with a trophy sitting beside me, but if not, hopefully a good weekend.
Well,
and,
she's going to be a decent old hangover Monday if that happens.
oh, mate, the podcast won't be Sunday night if I win. That's for sure. I'll be hammered for like a week, I reckon.
Oh, at least.
All right. Peace out, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.